regime.
Around the world and back, just some of what the Secretary of State Marco Rubio had to say today up on Capitol Hill, defending the administration's foreign policy issues. He went up there to talk about Venezuela, but perhaps the big news of the day is Iran. Full panel here with me now. Emily Brooks, congressional reporter for The Hill. Lindsey Granger doing double duty for us, co-host of Rising on the Hill. And Aaron McGuire is a Republican strategist. Hello to you all. Thanks for being here.
How's it going?
It's going all right. Thanks for coming in. So Marco Rubio up on the Hill today, right? And this was supposed to be about Venezuela. But the president starts the day off talking about Iran and a major threat. And now the question is, what comes from the commander-in-chief going forward on that front?
Well, I think what Rubio most notably said during that hearing was he did not rule out or kind of floated the possibility of preemptive strikes in Iran. And that, you know, will make some people who are a little bit skeptical of foreign policy intervention, their antennas go up. But, you know, I think that the administration wants to leave every option on the table. They don't want the Iranian regime to feel like they have any room here to, like, gain back power when, as Rubio said, they see the regime at its weakest point right now.
Yeah, the post this morning, Aaron, he called it, the president did, an armada that's moving quickly with great power, enthusiasm, and force. He referenced Operation Midnight Hammer. That was the one where the B-2 bombers went in. He put Iran on the clock and said the next attack could be far worse.
Yes, this is very Donald Trump of the situation, isn't it? I don't know how else to explain it. I mean, this is a show of force. This is FAFO by the president. He's saying, you guys
just bleep around and find out.
F around and find out, right? And the president is saying, you've called our bluff once before, and we bombed your nuclear facilities with our allies in the Middle East. How do you think that this will fare for you when we're able to completely control your airspace with the help of others previously to achieve our goals in a tactical way? The president's being very clear what he wants is the outcome here. And instead of previous Republican administrations where the action would have been boots on the ground because there was much more interventionist, the ability for technology to step in and for Donald Trump to still play the commander hardball sledgehammer in chief versus putting boots on the ground, that's where he can get away with it, Republicans, more than he could previously.
You wouldn't consider this interventionist?
Listen, I'm not saying it's not interventionist to get in, but he's not putting boots on the ground. And ultimately, that is always Trump's hard line in the sand on all of it, is when are we sending America's bravest, brightest in the future, our service members, on the ground in combat? That's really, I've always seen as his biggest line.
I think where everyone's on the same page is the fact that there's like humanitarian crisis in Iran, and the president seems to be talking to that directly. But then on the other hand, he's following the playbook of some interventionist strategies that we've seen in the past that historically don't work out for the U.S. We leave you see the state that we left Afghanistan in, the state that he campaigned upon, about the state that country is in. So if we're talking about America first, and that's what he ran on, a lot of his base is wanting the country to come first, and we're talking about an approval rating that continuously falls, I don't understand how he justifies going into Iran and going back into a possible war in the Middle East.
So I think there are a number of distinctions that need to be made between previous administrations and President Trump when it comes to interventionism. I think you need to look at the fact that Trump has always been very precision-focused on the strike, and he did not, especially in Iran and especially in other circumstances, take out the leadership, right? Even if you look at Venezuela, he took Maduro out, but he didn't take out the totality of the Venezuelan government and try to insert a new one. He is saying Venezuela needs to step up. They need to be their own leading governance. What we will do is remove the drug trafficker in chief and make sure that we take care of America first, which is protecting our citizens. I think that's a huge difference here in how he sees his foreign policy approach.
Speaking of Venezuela, Marco Rubio was up on the Hill today. That was, again, the reason why. Here was Senator Tim Kaine pressing the Secretary of State.
If it was such a righteous operation, why is the administration and the majority in this Senate so jealously protecting the details about it from being revealed to the American public? I have Virginians deployed in this operation. I can't answer their families' questions. Thank God we're having a public hearing 5 months in.
Marco Rubio up there today and defending what happened in Venezuela.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that a lot of the points that Aaron raised about, in Venezuela that has been kind of calming that kind of anti-interventionist wing of the Republican Party is that it hasn't been a full-on installing a different leader, trying to change the entire regime. But, there are still a lot of questions about what ultimately this means and what's going to happen moving forward. How much is the U.S. running things? And certainly putting Rubio in the hot seat there.
I think the motives are muddled. When you look at what's happening in Venezuela by leaving in the same leadership that is allegiant to Maduro, you have military on the streets going through cell phones, looking through WhatsApp for anybody who says anything negative about the current leadership. People are getting harassed in the same way that could lead up to another Iran situation. So when you go in and say that you care about the democracy but come out talking about the oil, people are really confused about what the motives are and don't know why we're there in the first place. If we got a leader out because of drugs or fentanyl that's not even mostly coming from that country.
I think that point is fair, that there's multiple messaging points on this, but I think all of it can be true at once. And I think that's where the admin needs to step in. It can be true they want a drug cartel in chief out of Venezuela. It can be true that they do not want to put the heavy hand on and insert their own people. But it can also be true that they're saying, we won't take out the vice president, but we want free and fair elections. Everything you're seeing, it might feel contradictory, and that's where the White House needs to clear up their messaging, especially the American people, especially when a Venezuela hearing then devolves into Iran. They're not even getting that opportunity.
By the way, when you talk about Iran and the decision that the commander-in-chief has before him tonight, since 1979, Iran responsible for terrorist attacks in 20 different countries, at least, around the world.
And likely thousands of Americans. There are multiple. There's the blood of Americans are all over Iranian hands.
All right. Also today, President Trump moving to the issue of Trump accounts. This was notable because you had the president in Iowa yesterday, Emily, going out on the road, and we know that the White House is going to put him out there weekly from here on out, 39 weeks until Election Day. But when you think about these Trump accounts, and that was that was the sales pitch from the administration today. Look at what we're doing for you, your children, and your family. 57% of the country's never heard of it. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think, one of the issues before them on this issue. And I think it goes to underscore just sort of one of the many challenges before the president tonight as he tries to pitch this affordability message.
Absolutely. And that's something that I've heard repeatedly from Republicans on Capitol Hill who have been saying over and over, we passed this huge, one big, beautiful bill, this legislation. It did this and this and this, but it was so big that maybe they've had trouble messaging exactly what is in it. The Trump account's a major portion of that. $1,000 for each child born last year, this year, and for a certain period of time. However, you have that as part of this affordability message, but it's going to be 18 years before those children born can even use that money and any money that their parents put into it. So I think that there's going to be some questions that the administration has to answer about what are they giving Americans now.
Real quick, this going to resonate?
Well, I think kids get something instead of nothing, but I do think it separates the rich and the poor. So the haves can donate up to $5,000 to their kids and walk away with $9,000 before they're 18, and then the have-nots can't contribute much, and they might have $5,000 for college.
Resonate?
I think it can resonate. If the largest issue right here is name ID on what this program is, that's an easy, as a political strategist, what an easy problem to throw money at, to be able to spend money on ads, on targeting voters, on getting that message out there. That's the easy part for the admin. It's making sure the message is clear that this is Trump focused and a Trump deliverable will probably be their focus going into midterms to say, look at what we've done for you. Come on, Janet Jackson, what have you done for me lately? Let's go.
No, Nicki Minaj. Nicki Minaj.
Yeah, she was the one today for these newborn accounts over at the White House. Aaron, Lindsay, Emily, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So how about this? High times in the Windy City. What's going on at the United Center?